Chapter 1. Maria. 3 years and 8 months exactly. I wasn't counting on purpose. It's just that it felt like the amount of time it should take me to learn how to breathe again. But the pain of betrayal, it's like a bone that healed wrong. It still aches sometimes, even when the weather forecast says sunny. Jennifer called at 7:30 in the morning. I was already in the kitchen, brewing ginger tea with lemon, a habit I picked up after the divorce, when I realized I could finally have whatever I wanted for breakfast, not whatever was good for a man over 50. I was looking out the window of my cozy apartment on the 23rd floor. Down below, people scurried like ants. I didn't scurry anymore. "Mom," my daughter's voice was sharper than usual. "I made a decision. I don't want him there." I set down my cup. The porcelain clinked softly against the saucer. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the morning quiet. Steve was at the gym, so I was alone in the apartment. "Jen, sweetie," I started. "No, Mom." She cut me off and I heard her voice shake. She was 30, a grown woman engaged soon to be a wife herself. But right now she sounded like that little girl whose dad used to brush her hair and buy her pink ice cream at the park. "It still hurts. He humiliated you. He humiliated all of us. I remember you that night. I'll never forget it." I closed my eyes. And I was right back there. The anniversary, 25 years together. I'd worn a navy blue dress with lace sleeves that night. My ex-husband loved it when I dressed elegantly. I ordered his favorite cake, dark, bitter chocolate, the kind he always asked for and then complained gave him heartburn. I even brought antacids along. We were celebrating at a cozy Italian restaurant. The kids came, our friends came. Marcus flew in from Boston, and Jen took time off work. And Andrew. Andrew stood up, glass in hand. He looked like he'd been rehearsing for weeks. His eyes were glassy. I'd never seen him like that before. I smiled, thinking he was about to say something touching, about our love, about how we'd made it through everything. "I want to raise a toast to an upgrade," he began. The room went quiet. There comes a moment in a man's life when he realizes old things need to be replaced with new ones. A car, a watch, a wife. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. Jen choked on her wine. Marcus froze, his fork suspended in midair. And Andrew pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket and placed it in front of me, right on a small greasy stain left by an olive. "The divorce papers are in there, Maria. I've already signed them. I'm leaving you for Veronica. I need an upgrade." Upgrade. That word burned itself into my memory like a hot iron. Not divorce. Not "I'm sorry." Not "our relationship has run its course." Upgrade. As if I were an old phone model with a dying battery and a cracked screen. As if 25 years, 2 pregnancies, sleepless nights over school projects, his diets, his medications, the business I helped him build in those early years, all of that was just functionality. I didn't cry then. Surprising, right? I felt like someone had ripped out my backbone. I sat there, staring at the envelope, and felt something inside me die. Not even love, that had probably died earlier. I just hadn't noticed. Trust was dying. The self-worth I'd built over 25 years was dying. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some started to leave. Jen jumped up and started screaming. I don't remember the words, just the sound, high and piercing. Marcus walked up to his father and said, quietly enough for everyone to hear, "You're not my father anymore." Then they both led me away, like a wounded soldier being carried off a battlefield. No one ever touched the cake. For 3 years now, I'd sometimes wake up with that taste in my mouth, the bitterness of uneaten chocolate. "Mom, are you listening?" Jen's voice brought me back. "Yes, sweetie, I'm listening." "I don't want to invite him, and I don't want him walking me down the aisle. Steve will walk me, if you're okay with that." "Steve." I smiled when I heard his name. "My fiancé." Yes, women in their 50s can have fiancés, and mine is the best. An IT director, talented, attentive, incredibly patient. He came into my life right when I stopped being afraid to look in the mirror, when I finally understood that my life belongs to me. Steve is 8 years younger than I am. At first, that bothered me. Then I stopped caring. I'm okay with that, I said gently. Steve is a wonderful man, he'll be honored. Then why are you trying to talk me into inviting him? Jen asked with a surprised sigh. We don't need him there, right? I took a sip of my tea. It had cooled and turned bitter, too much ginger. I just want you to think it over, I said finally. Not about him, about yourself. Your father was. I hesitated. Calling him a good father right now after everything was physically painful. But the truth is the truth. He was a good father when you were little. He tied your hair ribbons. He taught Marcus how to play baseball. He took both of you to Disneyland. That was one person. Then a different person showed up. But the first one still exists in your memories. Mom, Jen's voice wavered. Are you defending him? No, I answered firmly because this was important. I'm not defending him, not ever. What he did was cruel, vicious, and humiliating. I haven't forgiven him. I may never forgive him. But I don't want you to look back in 10 years and regret that he wasn't at your wedding. Jen was quiet. I could hear her breathing, ragged, like a child trying not to cry. You're too good, Mom, she whispered. No, I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. I'm just old enough not to trip over my own pride. Pride is a bad advisor, Jen. It often makes us do things we end up regretting. Do you really think I might regret it? I think it's your decision. I'm not pushing. I just want you to weigh it carefully. Invite him as a guest, not as the father walking you down the aisle, just as a person who used to be your dad. And then, let things be what they will be. Jen sighed, a long, heavy sigh from someone carrying a burden she shouldn't have to carry. I'll think about it, she said finally, but I'm not promising anything. That's enough, sweetie. We said goodbye. I put my phone on the table and looked at my hands. 56 years old. The skin wasn't as firm anymore, and the veins showed more than they used to. But my nails were neat, with no bitten edges. I get a manicure every 2 weeks now, not once a month because the family budget isn't made of rubber. I stood up and walked to the mirror in the hallway. Over the past 3 years, I'd lost 18 pounds. Not from dieting. I just stopped eating food I didn't like. And I started swimming. The pool is across the street, and I go 3 times a week. My face looked fresher. I stopped dyeing my hair dark. Now it's silver ash with streaks Steve calls frost at dawn. I was different. Not the Maria Andrew had thrown away like old furniture. And that was my revenge. Unconscious. Unplanned. The sweetest kind. That evening, Marcus, my son, stopped by to see Steve and me. He walked in carrying a huge bouquet of hydrangeas, my favorite, blue as the sea in Croatia, where I never did go with Andrew. Too expensive, why bother? We can relax at home. My son pressed his stubbly cheek against mine. He always forgot to shave when he was nervous. Mom, did you really tell Jen to invite him? He asked, skipping even a hello. Let's just have dinner first, I sighed. We ate quickly. Afterward, Steve tactfully excused himself to his office. He knew conversations like this needed to be one-on-one. So my son and I were alone in the dining room. I didn't tell her to. I asked her to think about it, I answered. That's the same thing. You know she listens to you. I turned to my son. He's 28. In his eyes was the same pain from 3 years ago, only cooled and hardened into a solid stone of resentment. Marcus hadn't spoken to his father since that night. Not one call. Not one text. Marcus, I took his hand. His palm was big and warm, smelling faintly of leather and wood. He's an architect, always on construction sites. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm not asking Jen to forgive him. I haven't forgiven him myself. But there's a difference between forgiveness and regret. What difference, Mom? Forgiveness is about him. Regret is about you. I don't regret what happened. I went through hell, but I came out the other side. I'm stronger. But if Jen someday realizes she wishes her father had been at her wedding and it's too late, that'll be her regret. And it will last a lifetime. Marcus turned away. I saw his Adam's apple bob. He betrayed all of us, my son said flatly. Yes, I agreed. He did, cruelly, nastily, humiliatingly. I'm not arguing with that. That secretary, he clenched his free hand into a fist. She messed with his head. I smirked. Marcus, even unconsciously, was still trying to excuse his father. It's not his fault. She cast a spell on him. That comment told me I was doing the right thing. This is exactly why my children need to decide for themselves what matters more. She sang and he listened, I said. It made for a great duet, but the responsibility for his words and actions is his alone. He's a grown man. He could have said no at any point. My son fell silent. Then he nodded. But I could see it. He still blamed her as the main villain. Fine. That's his right. So that's the only reason you want him at the wedding? He asked finally. So Jen won't regret it. Yes, I care about her, not him. Marcus let go of my hand and rubbed his face. You know, Mom, I admire you, he said quietly. If I were in your shoes, I'd have gone for his throat and never spoken his name again. But somehow you're above it. I'm not above it, I shook my head. I just learned to separate what's mine from what's his. My pain is mine, and I've dealt with it. His sins are his. He'll live with them, or he won't. Steve peeked into the dining room just as my son, and I finished talking. He's always like that. Appearing quietly, but right on time. With a smile that doesn't pressure, only warms. With eyes that don't look through you, but into your soul. While you two were talking, I ran to the pastry shop, since we didn't have dessert. He nodded toward the box he was carrying. Eclairs, my son exclaimed. Your favorite, Steve said with a nod. Anything with custard is his favorite, I said, smiling. What an observant woman I've ended up with. Steve winked at Marcus and sat down next to me. He placed a hand on my shoulder lightly, without possessiveness. Just, I'm here, I'm with you. Marcus looked at us and suddenly smiled. For the first time all evening. Okay, Mom, you're right. Let Jen decide for herself. I won't interfere. Thank you, son. He left around 11. I was washing dishes, and Steve was drying them. We were quiet, and that silence felt so familiar and safe that my eyes stung. Are you crying? He asked softly. No, I lied. Maria. He turned me gently by the shoulders and looked into my face. You're the strongest woman I know, but sometimes crying is a form of strength too. I buried my face in his sweater. It smelled of pine and something bitter, like orange zest. I feel so bad for my kids, not for myself, for them, I whispered. Marcus used to be so close to his father, Jen too, and now he's dead to them. That's true, Steve said quietly. Your children are doing what they believe is right. That man really is dead to them. Don't feel sorry for him. I don't feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for them. Even though I don't want to, I remember the past. How Andrew and I laughed when we bought our first house. How he cried in the delivery room when Marcus was born. How we danced in the kitchen to old records. And I remember his face that night when he handed me the envelope. The cold, unfamiliar face of a man who had decided I was a phase he'd outgrown. How is that possible? How do 25 years fit inside a pale yellow envelope? I don't know the answer. And I don't want to know anymore. But I want my daughter to be happy. And if that means inviting a ghost from the past to her wedding, then fine. I'm ready to sit next to that ghost and smile. Chapter 2, Maria. Jen and I met the next day at a cozy, quiet little cafe. A small spot at the intersection of two sleepy streets that served the best ristretto in town. I came half an hour early. I wanted to drink my coffee in peace and gather my thoughts. Jen was 20 minutes late. That wasn't like her. She was usually punctual to the minute. Today, she walked in disheveled, eyes wet, wearing no makeup. Sorry, Mom, she mumbled, collapsing into the chair across from me. I was crying in the car. I couldn't stop. I covered her hand with mine. My daughter's palm was cold. Because of him, I asked. Because of everything, Jen sniffled. Because of him, because of you, because of myself. I don't know, Mom. I called Dad yesterday. My heart skipped, but I didn't show it. And what did he say? He was quiet at first. For a long time, I thought he'd hung up. Then he said, Jennifer, is that you? His voice sounded so worn out, Mom, like an old man. I told him I'm getting married, and that Steve would be walking me down the aisle, and he started crying. A grown man crying on the phone. Jen fell silent, twisting a napkin in her fingers. I didn't rush her. He said he misses me, she continued in a whisper. That he wants to come, but how can I look at him after everything? You don't owe anything to anyone, I said. Not to him, not to me, not to anyone else. It's your wedding, your day. But you think I should invite him, don't you? I think you should make the choice that will be easier for you to live with. Not now, years from now. Jen looked at me for a long moment. Why are you so generous toward him? He humiliated you so badly. I took a sip of coffee, bitter with a hint of acidity, just the way I like it. I'm not thinking about your father. I shook my head. I'm thinking about you. No matter what happened between us, he was a father to you and Marcus. But Mom, it's your business, Jen. I gently cut her off. You don't have to ask him to walk you down the aisle, but you could still send him an invitation. As a guest, no strings attached. Jen fell silent. At the next table, a group of young women laughed, carefree, clutching plastic cups of lattes. I watched them without envy. I'd had their youth. I'd had love. I'd had a family. It all fell apart, but I didn't regret it. I'll think about it, Jen said finally. Honestly. That's enough. We ordered more coffee. We talked about the dress, the flowers, the fact that there would be a jazz quartet instead of a DJ. Normal pre-wedding chaos. I looked at my daughter and saw myself 30 years ago. Nervous, beautiful, full of hope. I got home around 5. Steve had already made dinner, roasted fish with vegetables, my favorite. Candles were lit in the living room. He kissed my temple and didn't ask any questions. He knew I'd tell him when I was ready. We ate in silence, and that silence felt so familiar that my heart clenched. I love you, I said. Steve looked up and smiled. I know, I love you too. And that was all we needed. Chapter 3, Maria. Steve and I went away for the weekend to his small cabin by the lake. A quiet weekend. No phones, no news, no worries. I'd wanted to be alone with him for a while, not in the city, not in the hustle and bustle, but somewhere where all you could hear was the wind and the water. He drove. I watched out the window. Woods, fields, and little towns with churches and water towers rolled by. Every now and then, Steve would lift my hand to his lips and kiss it. Just because. No reason. Steve's cabin was very cozy. It had his touch everywhere. Wooden walls, a fireplace, a large porch overlooking the lake. A bottle of red wine and a bowl of fruit were already waiting on the table. Steve had somehow managed to arrange it all in advance. It was a little chilly, so he lit a fire while I unpacked. Nice here, isn't it? He asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I stood by the window. Very, I answered. It's so peaceful, like time has stopped. Maybe that's for the best. Let's not be in a hurry. We walked along the shore, breathing in the damp autumn air and collecting pebbles. Steve told me about his work, some complicated systems I didn't fully understand, but I listened with pleasure. He had a gift for explaining complex things simply, and he never got tired of answering my dumb questions. During dinner, candles, wine, and his signature rosemary steak, we talked about my attempt to influence my daughter's decision. I don't know if I did the right thing, I admitted, poking at a roasted pepper with my fork. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten involved. Jen's an adult. You couldn't have acted any differently, Steve said with a smile, holding my hand. You're a very generous person and you don't hold grudges. That's one of the reasons I love you. Generosity sometimes borders on foolishness, I sighed. And sometimes it borders on wisdom. You gave her room to think, not an order. That's a huge difference. He squinted at me, over the rim of his glass. "But are you sure this is the right decision? For her?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I'm afraid that one day she'll regret it if her father isn't there. Not because he deserves it, but because sometimes we regret the things we didn't do more than the things we did." I fell silent, staring at the candle flame. The fire flickered, casting shadows across Steve's face. "He really broke me back then," I said quietly. "Humiliated me. Divorce is one thing, but preparing the papers and handing them to me during our anniversary celebration, telling me I was old and that a man with his status needed someone younger, that was something else entirely." Steve squeezed my hand. "He's an idiot." "An idiot?" I laughed bitterly. "I don't think he used to be like that, or maybe he always was and he just hid it well. He was a good father to my children. That's what I'm trying to preserve, not him, but the memory of who he was to them. And for you." I thought about it. For me, he was a husband, good at times, bad at others. But now, he's just part of the past. I don't want to go back there, Steve. I want to look forward. He raised his glass. "Then let's drink to the future." "To the future," I answered. We clinked glasses. The wine was warm, tannic, with notes of berries. The evening stretched slowly like caramel. After dinner, we sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. They were brighter here than in the city. "You know," Steve said, "when I met you, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone. And then you appeared. And I realized I wasn't waiting to be alone. I was waiting for you." I turned to him. In the darkness, his eyes looked almost black, but they were warm. "You say beautiful things," I whispered. "I tell the truth. You deserve beautiful things, Maria, beautiful words, and a beautiful life." He kissed me. On the lips. Gently. Weightlessly. As if he were savoring the moment. Then we sat together, listening to the water lap against the shore and the gulls crying somewhere in the distance. I felt calm. The past stayed back there. In the city. In the other house. With the other person. Here by the lake, there was only the present. And it was beautiful. Chapter 4, Maria. We returned to the city Sunday evening. Monday morning, Jen showed up at my place unannounced. No call, carrying a notebook full of wedding notes and wearing a determined look on her face. "Mom, I've decided," she said from the doorway, not even letting me pour her tea. "I'm inviting Dad, but only as a guest." She sat on the couch and folded her hands in her lap. "Steve is still walking me down the aisle." I smiled. Inside, I felt relief. Not for Andrew's sake. For hers. Because she'd made this choice herself, not under pressure, but after weighing everything carefully. "Are you sure?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "No, not at all," Jen admitted. "But I thought about what you said, about regret. I don't want to beat myself up in 10 years for being too proud. I can be polite for one evening, for my own sake. And not for his." "Not for his," she shook her head. "So I don't torture myself later. This is my wedding, Mom. I want to remember it lightly, not with a stone on my heart." I sat beside her and hugged her. "You've grown up, Jen." "I'm 30, Mom. About time." Age doesn't matter. Decisions matter. And this is a mature one. We talked for another hour about the little things. Flowers, music, the cake. I listened and nodded. Jen was happy. That was what mattered. That evening, I told Steve. She invited him, just as a guest. You're still walking her down the aisle. Steve nodded, glancing at me over his laptop screen. He'd been working on a project, but he set it aside when I started talking. "That's a huge honor," he said with a quiet exhale, "to walk your daughter down the aisle." He kissed my cheek. "You'll be fine," I said with a teasing smile. "I'll try," Steve answered seriously. "But the most important thing is that I'll do whatever it takes to make Jen smile that day, and to make you smile." He reached over and kissed my forehead. "We'll have our own ceremony soon enough," he reminded me. "That's right," I said, smiling. We'd been ready to become husband and wife for quite a while, but I wanted Jen to get married first. I didn't want to steal her thunder. After her wedding, we can start planning ours, I said. Deal. He went back to work, and I went back to my book. We sat in the same room, quietly. And it felt like happiness. Chapter 5, Maria. 1 week until Jen's wedding. Steve's and my apartment had turned into an extension of a bridal salon. Dresses, shoes, invitation samples, ribbons, and guest lists everywhere. I was helping my daughter with the final preparations, but I tried not to interfere with her decisions. She was a grown woman. My job was support, not control. The biggest event of that week was dinner with the groom's parents. David and Alice Mitchell had flown in from Ohio. I was more nervous than Jen. We'd never met them. All I knew was that they were good people, that David was a retired engineer, and that Alice was an elementary school teacher. The dinner was held at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Everyone came. Jen and Tom, Marcus and his girlfriend Lauren, Steve and me. Tom's parents were exactly as I'd imagined, warm, simple, and unpretentious. Maria, dear. Alice hugged me like an old friend, even though we'd just met. Jen has told us so much about you. We're so happy to finally meet you. She smelled like pies and lavender. My heart warmed immediately. Likewise, Alice, I replied. David was quiet, but he had a kind smile. He shook Steve's hand, patted Marcus on the shoulder, and told Tom, "You found a good girl. Don't mess it up." Tom blushed. Jen laughed. Dinner was easy and comfortable. We talked about the weather, travel, and the kids. Alice showed us photos of Tom as a child, including one of him sitting on a potty with a book in his hands. Everyone laughed. Watching the scene, I thought how wonderful it was that my daughter had found her way into such a family. Warm. Real. No drama. How long have you two been together? Alice asked, looking at Steve and me. Almost 2 years, Steve answered. You're a lovely couple, Alice said. And she said it so sincerely that I believed her. Steve squeezed my hand under the table. I looked at him. He was smiling. After dinner, we stepped outside. The air was damp and autumnal, but not cold. Marcus was talking quietly with Lauren. Jen was hugging Tom. Alice was telling David something animatedly, gesturing with her hands. An ordinary evening. An ordinary family. So, Steve asked. Good, I answered. Very good. Your daughter chose the right man. I smiled. We got into the car. I leaned my head back against the headrest and closed my eyes. Steve started the engine. Tired? A little, but it's a good kind of tired. Tomorrow will be easier. Tomorrow's the last day before the wedding. And the day after that, we dance. I opened my eyes and looked at him. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll always be like this. Simple, peaceful, no drama. Steve smiled. I promise. Drama happens sometimes, but we'll get through it together. Okay. Okay, I nodded. He kissed my hand. The city lights drifted past outside. I felt serene. Not euphoric. Not wildly happy. Just calm. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the future. It was there. And it was with me. Chapter 6, Maria. The wedding. Everything was beautiful. The sunshine. The flowers. The music. The smiles. Jen glowed in her white dress, and Tom looked at her as if she were the only woman on earth. I stood beside Steve, feeling a quiet, deep joy spread through me. The ceremony ended. We applauded the newlyweds. Then Steve turned to me, slipped an arm around my waist, and kissed me, lightly, gently, right in front of everyone. We're next, he said, looking into my eyes. I smiled. For a joyful moment, my heart seemed to stop, then started beating faster. Are you proposing? I asked playfully. I already did. You said yes, I'm just reminding you. I laughed. Everything was easy with him. Even a lifetime commitment. Afterward, we greeted guests at the entrance to the banquet hall. I accepted flowers, hugged arriving guests, smiled, and joked with Steve. Everything was going smoothly. Then I saw Andrew again. I had already seen him after the ceremony, but at the time I'd been focused on my daughter, not my ex-husband. Now we were face to face. I recognized him before he even walked in, by his heavy gait and the way he hesitated at the door. Veronica walked beside him. I remembered her. 3 years ago, she was 25. Young, flashy, with raven black hair she constantly tossed back like a model in a shampoo commercial. She wore short skirts, high heels, and her laugh carried across the entire office. Sometimes I would stop by Andrew's office with lunch and notice the way she looked at him, with the greedy, appraising gaze of a hunter. Now, only 3 years later, she looked 15 years older. I stared, unable to believe my eyes. The skin beneath her eyes was gray and puffy. Her hair was dull, with visible roots showing through, as if she had dyed it herself in a hurry. The red dress that had once fit her perfectly now clung to the rolls beneath her arms and around her waist. She looked worn down, unattractive, stripped of the youthful lightness that had once been her greatest weapon. She could easily have passed for 40. And my ex-husband had gone downhill too. Andrew had gained a tremendous amount of weight. Not just a few pounds. He had spread out. His stomach hung over his belt. His jowls sagged. He was balding, a large bald spot on the crown of his head, with thin white hair doing nothing to conceal it. Loose skin hung from his face. A fold sat beneath his chin. Deep wrinkles around his mouth gave him a permanently sour expression. I used to manage his diet. I had a whole system. Oatmeal with berries in the morning. Soup and steamed chicken for lunch. Fish and vegetables for dinner. No fried foods. No sugar. Alcohol only on holidays. And vitamins and supplements. I sorted them into weekly organizers so he wouldn't forget. I took care of him. His health. His appearance. But apparently, his young wife didn't bother with such trivial things. She didn't feed him properly. She didn't monitor his blood pressure. She didn't make him go to the gym. She took his money, his house, and his status. That was enough for her. Now they stood in the doorway of the banquet hall, and I watched them with a strange sense of calm. No gloating. No pain. Not even satisfaction. Just the understanding that I had nothing to do with this man anymore. He had chosen his life. And there it was, standing in front of me in a wrinkled red dress and sagging skin. Andrew looked up and saw me. He froze. I watched his eyes move over my figure, my face, my hair, the way I stood. I saw the shock. Real physical shock. He had expected to see the woman he left behind, tired, aged, with dead eyes. He expected me to be crushed. Pathetic. Alone. Instead, he saw me. In 3 years, I'd lost 18 pounds. I'd been swimming, exercising, and gotten a new haircut. I'd stopped eating food I didn't like. I slept as much as I needed, not as much as was required to get up and make his breakfast. My skin glowed. My eyes sparkled. And beside me stood a man who looked at me with love, not obligation. Andrew opened his mouth. Closed it. Then opened it again. He didn't know what to say. Veronica tugged at his sleeve and whispered something, probably, "Don't just stand there." But he didn't hear her. He was looking at me, as if seeing me for the first time. "Maria," he began. His voice was hoarse and worn. "Andrew," I replied evenly. "Come in, have a seat. Jen saved places for you." No hello. No how are you. No nice to see you. Because I wasn't glad. But I was polite. For my daughter's sake. For this day. He nodded, took Veronica by the elbow, and led her toward their table. She walked with her lips pursed, clearly unhappy with the reception. She wanted everyone to look at her. But no one did. The guests had known the story for a long time, and everyone had already formed their own opinions. Steve slipped an arm around my shoulders. "You're doing great," he said quietly. "I haven't done anything," I replied. "I'm just standing here watching." "That's enough. You're carrying yourself like a queen." I smiled. A queen? No. Just a woman who had finally understood that her worth doesn't depend on whether a man values her. "Let's go greet the rest of the guests," I said. "The wedding continues." I smiled, shook hands, and hugged friends. I didn't look back at Andrew. Not once. Because the past was behind me, and the future was right beside me. In Steve's kiss. In his we're next. In the quiet certainty that I was finally where I belonged.
Chapter 7, Andrew. I used to have a strong, loving family. A wife, a daughter, a son, and I had a good business. I was a happy man, but I didn't think so at the time. You know what the main problem is for successful men? We get used to good things. We stop noticing what we have because it all becomes background, like air. You don't think about air while you have it. You only start to choke, and then you understand how much you needed it. I'm choking now. Every day. But back then, years ago, I was breathing deeply and didn't appreciate it. I remember our house in the suburbs. 2 stories, white columns at the entrance, a big lawn in front of the porch where the kids played soccer while I grilled meat. Maria would come outside with lemonade, always cold, always fresh with mint from her own garden. She'd smile, squinting in the sun, and I'd think, what a nice picture. Not what a nice life. A picture, a photograph in the family album. Because I'd stopped feeling it. I saw it, but I didn't sense it. Fool. I had an ideal life. My own thriving business. A daughter. A son. Jen was born when we were both 30. I remember holding her in the delivery room, a tiny bundle with fists the size of my knuckle. She opened her eyes and looked at me. I cried. A grown man, a business owner, someone who signed million-dollar contracts, crying like a baby because for the first time in my life I understood there was something more important than money. Marcus was born 2 years later. I didn't cry that time, I was proud. A son, an heir. I imagined us playing baseball, me handing the business down to him, the 2 of us sitting in a bar talking man-to-man. We did play baseball. He was terrible, but I pretended he was talented. We went fishing. He hated worms, I got annoyed, but then we'd laugh. We went to Disneyland, and Marcus loved pirates, so we rode that attraction 5 times in a row until I got dizzy. And Jen danced. We put her in ballet, and I watched her recitals from the front row, feeling like my chest would burst with pride. She was so small in her little ballerina dress, and so serious, as if the fate of the world depended on her dance. Maria was always there. She didn't perform on stage. She didn't sign contracts. She didn't negotiate. She was the one who held everything together. She remembered all our friends' birthdays. She cooked dinners for business partners, and they left feeling like they were dealing with a real family, not a corporation. She got the kids ready for school, checked homework, went to parent-teacher conferences. I went twice in all those years. I was busy. Business. Meetings. Business trips. I thought my work was taking care of my family. That money replaced presents. That giving them everything they wanted, a house, cars, education, made me a good husband and father. I was wrong. Years passed. The kids grew up. Jen went to Columbia. I was proud, and I paid for it. She called once a week. She talked to Maria longer than she talked to me. I was offended, but I didn't show it. Marcus chose Boston, architecture. I didn't understand it. Why not business? Why not economics? But he was stubborn like me. We argued, then I gave in. The house emptied. Jen's room became a guest room. Marcus's room became a home office I used once a month. Hallways that once rang with children's laughter were now as quiet as a museum. I'd come home from work, silence. I'd come down to breakfast, silence. Only Maria putting a bowl of oatmeal in front of me and asking, "How'd you sleep?" Maria stayed the same. Same eyes, same hands, same care. She hadn't changed, but when I looked at her, all I saw was emptiness. It bothered me. I didn't understand that feeling then. I thought she was the problem. Her wrinkles, her gray hair that she'd stopped dyeing, her habit of talking about health, pills, blood pressure. Her constant, "Andrew, don't eat fried food. Andrew, take your vitamins. Andrew, go to bed earlier." I felt like she reminded me of old age. That I wasn't young anymore. That life had passed me by. The truth was, I was bothered by myself, by looking at her and not feeling what I used to feel, by not being able to turn back time, by being afraid to look toward the future. But it was easier to be angry at her than at myself. And then Veronica appeared. I hired her because my old secretary retired. Actually, I fired her because she'd gotten too slow, too old, too inconvenient. I wanted someone young, fast, energetic, someone who matched my status. Veronica came from some small town whose name I didn't even remember, somewhere deep in the sticks where there were no prospects, where girls dreamed of getting out at any cost. She was striking, not beautiful, striking. Tall, slender, with dark hair she kept flipping back. She wore short skirts and heels so high I felt pain just looking at them. During the interview, she looked at me like I wasn't her boss. I was her ticket to another life. "Mr. Harris," she said, her voice cat-like purring, "I'll do anything to make you satisfied." She emphasized anything. I shouldn't have hired her. But I did. Because I was 57, and a 24-year-old woman was looking at me like I was a man, not an old geezer. She settled in quickly. She organized my schedule so I had more free time, time I spent in the office because I didn't want to go home. She brought coffee exactly when I started feeling tired. She remembered my favorite takeout orders. She laughed at my jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. And every day, she told me what I wanted to hear. "Mr. Harris, a man your age, that's nothing. Men in their 60s are just starting to live. Women, on the other hand, age fast. Mr. Harris, you're in the prime of life. You have everything ahead of you, new victories, new opportunities, a new life. Mr. Harris, your wife is dragging you down into old age. She reminds you of sickness and wrinkles, but you deserve youth, joy, happiness." I listened, and I believed her, because I wanted to believe her. At first, I doubted her sincerity. I suspected she wanted my money, my status, my connections. But her words hit my most vulnerable place, my fear of aging. She offered me a cure. I drank it, never thinking about the side effects. I'd come home from the office, from Veronica to my old wife. And gradually, everything began to repulse me. Maria would ask, "How was your day?" And I'd snap, "Fine, what else would happen?" She'd put dinner in front of me, and I'd pick at it without appetite, thinking about how Veronica had laughed at my joke at lunch. Maria would say, "Andrew, your blood pressure is up. Take your pill," and I'd hear, "You're old and sick. You're worthless." She reminded me of my mortality. Veronica reminded me of my eternal youth. It was a lie. Sweet, soothing, deadly, but I chose it. I started comparing. Maria in her bathrobe, hair wet from the shower, no makeup. Veronica always made up, always in something tight, always smelling of expensive perfume. Maria talking about health, our grown children, soon-to-come grandchildren. Veronica talking about travel, adventure, how we'd go to the Maldives. I forgot that Maria had once been young too. That I'd seen her without makeup a million times and considered it intimacy, not a flaw. That her care wasn't control. It was love. I forgot everything because it was convenient to forget. One evening, a year before the divorce, I was sitting in the kitchen while Maria washed dishes. She was saying something about Marcus, about him finding a girlfriend, about how it would be nice to meet her. I watched her back, her sweatpants, the elastic digging into her waist, and I was overwhelmed with disgust. I said, "Stop nagging. Don't you have anything else to talk about?" She fell silent, put a plate in the drying rack, wiped her hands, and said quietly, "I just want us to be a family, Andrew, like we used to be." "We can't go back," I answered. Then I walked to my office, closed the door, opened my laptop, wrote to Veronica, dinner tomorrow. She answered within a minute, always happy to, Mr. Harris. I didn't sleep all night. Not from guilt, from anticipation. 6 months later, I started preparing the divorce papers. A year later, I raised that toast. Chapter 8, Andrew. I remember the past. That feeling of being suffocated. My life was suffocating me. My house, my wife, the evening silence, sitting in the living room while Maria watched some TV show, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. Tick-tock, tick-tock, time passing, life passing. I was gasping, and I felt like if I stayed one more second in that house, in that life with that woman, I would simply die. Not physically, inside. Dry up like a tree no one watered anymore. Veronica was a breath of fresh air. No, not air. Pressurized oxygen. She burst into my life with loud laughter, flashy clothes, and stories about conquering the world. She didn't talk about pills, blood pressure, or roof repairs. She talked about restaurants, travel, how we'd go to France and drink wine by the ocean. "You deserve this, Andrew," she said. And for the first time in my life, I heard from a woman not "we should," but "you deserve." She beckoned, like fire beckons a moth, like a siren beckons a sailor toward the rocks. I knew it was dangerous. I felt myself falling into an abyss, but I couldn't stop. I fell for it. Like a schoolboy. Like a damn fool. Like someone who forgot he had a wife, children, a reputation. I only saw her eyes, her smile, her hands adjusting my tie and saying, "You look so young, Andrew." I didn't look young. I was 57, my temples had started to gray, and my belly was more noticeable than it had been at 40. But I wanted to believe. I needed to believe. Because the truth was too bitter. I was getting older, life had passed me by, and I hadn't done anything important. Veronica gave me an illusion. And I grabbed it with both hands. I started thinking of Maria as an obstacle, a wall separating me from real life. Every morning, having breakfast with her, I felt irritation. Every evening, coming home, I felt tired, not physically, emotionally. Her presence drained my energy. Or so I told myself. The truth was, I just wanted to justify my affair. I needed to convince myself she was bad so I wouldn't feel guilty. I searched for flaws in her. I blew every little thing into a catastrophe. She put out the wrong spoon. She didn't look the right way. She said something off. Everything went into the pile. She doesn't understand me. She doesn't appreciate me. She doesn't love me. She only loves my money. Lies. I knew they were lies. But I repeated them so often that I started believing them myself. And at some point, I decided I had to leave in style. Not style as in with dignity. Style as in spectacularly. With a bang. So everyone would remember. So no one would doubt that I was the main character of this story. I chose our anniversary. 25 years. Why the anniversary? Because Veronica said, the louder it is, the faster she'll let you go. She'll be too ashamed to cling. Now I understand that Veronica just wanted to destroy Maria once and for all, so she wouldn't get in the way of living in my house and spending my money. But back then, I listened and nodded. It seemed like a brilliant plan. I prepared the papers. My lawyer was surprised. "Are you sure, Mr. Harris? Maybe try counseling." I said, "Just do it." He did. I put the envelope in the inside pocket of my jacket. Carried it for 3 days. At home, I hid it in the safe so Maria wouldn't accidentally find it. Each time I took it out, my heart pounded. Not from fear. From anticipation. I was sick. I didn't understand it then. The evening of our 25th anniversary. Maria chose an Italian restaurant. Nothing flashy, nothing trendy, cozy with red and white checkered tablecloths, live music, the smell of garlic and rosemary. She asked for candles. She wore the navy blue dress with lace sleeves. I'd bought it for her 5 years earlier and she'd saved it for special occasions. She wore her earrings, small pearls in platinum, a gift from her mother. She put on makeup. She rarely wore makeup in those last years, but that night she'd done eyeshadow and eyeliner. She looked almost like she did on our wedding day. For her, the evening was special. For me, it wasn't. Guests gathered around 7. Friends, business partners, neighbors. Jen arrived with flowers, a huge bouquet of peonies, her mother's favorite. Marcus came with a bottle of expensive wine he'd chosen himself after consulting a sommelier. They hugged their mother and kissed her cheek. Marcus whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, brightly, youthfully, her head thrown back. I watched them and felt like a stranger at my own celebration. Maria ordered chocolate cake. My favorite. The waiter brought it with a sparkler that sent sparks into the air, and everyone applauded. The cake was dark brown, with glaze that shone like a mirror. Maria looked at me over the candles. 25 years, Andrew, she said. How time flies. I didn't answer. I looked at the cake and thought, why don't you remember the doctor told me to avoid chocolate? Why don't you listen to me? Why don't you care about my health? It was a lie. She didn't know. I hadn't told her. But I was looking for reasons to hate her. And I found them. Everyone sat down. Maria sat beside me. I felt her warmth, her scent, flowers, and vanilla. She put her hand over mine and asked, "Are you nervous?" "No," I answered. She smiled. Trustingly. Calmly. I waited. I wanted it to be over. My heart pounded in my throat. My hand clenched the envelope in my jacket pocket. Someone toasted us. To Andrew and Maria, still together after a quarter of a century. An example to us all. An example. Yes, I was about to set an example. I stood up. My glass of red wine trembled. Maria looked up at me. I saw love in her eyes. The mother of my children, the woman who'd taken care of me for 25 years, who'd waited, forgiven, smiled. She looked at me believing I was about to say something warm, something to remember forever. I spoke. I want to raise a toast to an upgrade. Silence. The music at the next table stopped. The waiter froze with a pitcher of water. One friend laughed nervously, unsure whether it was a joke. There comes a moment in a man's life when he understands. Old things need to be replaced with new ones. Like I change cars, I change my wife. My tongue wouldn't obey. The words came out wooden, rehearsed. I recited them because I'd practiced them in front of the bathroom mirror. Maria's eyes widened. Her smile froze, then slowly slid off her face like a mask after a performance. "Andrew," she whispered, "you're joking, right?" I took out the envelope, placed it in front of her, on the red and white checkered tablecloth. Right on a small yellow olive oil stain, tiny, almost invisible. But I would remember it for the rest of my life. As if everything around us were perfect. The restaurant, the candles, the cake, the music, and this envelope lay on that little greasy spot, the dirtiest envelope of my life. The divorce papers are in there. I've already signed them. Once we're divorced, I'm marrying Veronica. "Your secretary?" Jen's voice cracked into a shriek. She dropped her fork, and it clattered to the floor. "She's not just a secretary," I said, though I could have kept my mouth shut. "She's my choice." "You're a monster," Marcus hissed. He stood up, pushing his chair back so hard that all the glasses on the table clinked. Maria didn't cry. She stared at the envelope. Stared for a long time without blinking. Her hands lay in her lap, white as snow. Then she lifted her eyes to me. And in them I saw not hatred. Not anger. I saw something inside her die. "Please," she said softly, so softly I barely heard it over the ringing in my ears. "Not in front of the children." "The children are adults," I answered. "They'll understand." They didn't understand. They never would. How could I have been such an idiot? Jen jumped up. Her chair fell over, hitting the wooden floor. She ran to her mother, wrapped her arms around her shoulders, and yelled at me, "You're not our father anymore. You're nothing, you hear me? Nothing." Marcus walked right up to me. The scent of his cologne, the one I'd given him for his birthday. He looked at me with such hatred that I stepped back. "You're not my father anymore," he said. Calmly, firmly, like a verdict. Then they led Maria away. She didn't look back. She didn't say a word. They held her arms as if she were blind. because she couldn't see through her tears. Or maybe because she didn't want to see that room, that table, that oil stain, and the envelope lying on it. Guests began to leave, some silently, throwing glances my way, some with loud curses. Friends I'd had beers with for 20 years, raised kids with, built a business with, they just got up and left. One woman, Linda, Maria's friend, spat at my feet, right on my expensive shoes. I was alone. The cake sat untouched. The candles Maria had lit before I stood up had already burned out, leaving small puddles of wax on the dark glaze. The waiter came over and asked, "Should I serve dessert?" "The cake is already served," I answered. He looked at the departing crowd, the empty chairs, me, alone at a table set for 12. And he left. I sat and stared at the untouched cake, the chocolate glaze shining like a mirror, the candles that were no longer burning, Maria's empty chair, her half-finished glass of wine. The restaurant emptied. Only the jazz band played in the corner. They didn't know what had happened. They played something slow and sad, though earlier it had been a foxtrot. I picked up a fork and broke off a piece of cake. The chocolate melted on my tongue, bitter, sweet, cloying, with a faint hint of rum. I've hated that cake since that day. Forever. Then I stood up and left. Veronica was waiting outside in the car. I got behind the wheel and she pecked my cheek. Her lips tasted like lipstick. "You did great," she said. "Now we're free." I didn't answer. "Let's go somewhere else," she said. "Celebrate, I'm hungry." We went to another restaurant. Veronica ordered champagne, steak, oysters, and tiramisu for dessert. She laughed, told me some story about her friends and shopping. I nodded, smiled, raised my glass. But inside me, a black hole was growing. I didn't yet understand that I had lost not only my wife. I had lost everything. My children, my respect, my peace, my purpose. That night I didn't know that yet. I sat in the restaurant, drank champagne, listened to Veronica's laugh, and thought I'd done everything right, that a new life was beginning. Free, young, real. I was wrong. And now every night, lying down to sleep in that empty house that was once full of laughter, I close my eyes and see that Italian restaurant Maria chose. The red checkered tablecloth, the oil stain, her eyes. I haven't touched chocolate cake since, but the taste remains. Bitter, sweet, cloying, like my life. Chapter 9, Andrew. And what did I get out of it? My children haven't spoken to me since. I say that and everything inside me turns over, because children aren't just children. They're Jen, who screamed, "You're a monster," in my face 3 years ago, and I thought she'd calm down, that time would pass, and she'd call. She didn't call. Not once. Not on my birthday, not at Christmas, not when I had a minor car accident on the highway and spent 3 days in the hospital. I lay in that room, staring at my phone, waiting. Silence. Marcus erased me from his life entirely. I heard about his successes from mutual acquaintances. Marcus got a promotion. Marcus bought an apartment. Marcus proposed to his girlfriend. I wasn't at the engagement. I wasn't invited. My son has a life, and there is no place in it for me. I deserve it. I know. But that doesn't make it easier. Jennifer turned 30. They had a big celebration. I found out through social media, saw a photo of a cake with the caption, "Happy birthday, my girl from Maria." I wrote a message, "Congratulations, sweetheart, I love you." She read it, there was a read receipt. But she didn't reply. Not even a like. Marcus turned 28. I called him last week. He picked up. I was happy at first, then I realized he must have answered by mistake. He had probably meant to reject the call, but hit accept instead. We were silent for 10 seconds. Then he said, "What do you want?" in a tone like I was a telemarketer. "I just wanted to hear your voice, son." "You lost that right," he answered and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone until the screen went dark. That's what I got. Silence. Emptiness. Absence. My business suffered too. After that evening at the Italian restaurant, news traveled fast. Very fast. In our town, everyone knows everyone. And the way I treated Maria, not leaving quietly, not divorcing civilly, but publicly humiliating her in front of friends, partners, children, became the talk of the town. My longtime business partner, the man who had started the venture with me 30 years ago, said, "Andrew, I don't want to do any more projects with you. You've shown who you are. I'm ashamed I've shaken your hand all these years." I lost 2 major contracts. Clients drifted away silently without explanation. They just stopped renewing agreements. One old-timer whose family had been friends with ours sent an email. "Dear Mr. Harris, we have decided to change suppliers. The reason is reputational risk." Reputational risk. I was a reputational risk. Employees at the office looked sideways at me, some with pity, some with judgment. My deputy, a talented guy I had trained myself, handed in his resignation 2 weeks after the anniversary dinner. "Mr. Harris, I respect you as a professional, but as a person, it's hard for me to work with you. I can't look you in the eye after what you did to your wife." Everyone knew I was one of those men. One of those men whose midlife crisis turned into betrayal, who changed women like socks and humiliated the ones who stood by them during hard times. The label successful businessman turned into that asshole who dumped his wife on their anniversary. I became a pariah in my own circles. At restaurants I'd gone to for years, waiters turned away. At the golf club, I stopped getting invited to doubles rounds. Even my barber, who had cut my hair for 15 years, asked during my last haircut, "Mr. Harris, is it true you told your wife she was old?" Okay, I fixed the business. Not immediately. Not easily. But I fixed it. I had to hire PR people, change my image, find new clients in other cities. Business is a matter of technique. Money makes money. I found new partners, signed new contracts. The numbers on the reports started climbing again. But the stain remained. My reputation was ruined forever. And I myself, I started deteriorating. I used to wake up at 6, exercise, eat the oatmeal with berries Maria made, and head to the office full of energy. Now I woke up whenever, maybe at 10, maybe at 11. Veronica didn't make breakfast. She slept until noon. I would drink coffee with buttered sandwiches I made myself, and that would be my first meal. Lunches, takeout. Dinners, restaurants, or more takeout. No system. No routine. Veronica would say, "Why cook when you can order? It's cheaper than hiring a chef." I'd agree. I'd stopped arguing with her. I didn't care anymore. 6 months after our wedding, I noticed my pants were getting tight. 3 months later, I bought new ones, a size larger, then another size. Fat accumulated around my stomach. Love handles. A double chin. I stopped looking in the mirror without a shirt. I couldn't stand seeing what I'd become. My blood pressure spiked. The doctor said, "Mr. Harris, you need to watch your diet. Eliminate salt, fatty foods, sugar, alcohol." I nodded and immediately forgot. Because there was no proper diet at home. Veronica ordered pizza, burgers, fries. I ate them because I was too lazy to order something separate for myself. I stopped taking vitamins. Maria used to sort them into daily containers. In the morning, I'd pour the day's portion into my hand and swallow them with water. I didn't even know what they were. Now there was no container. Veronica said, "What are you, a child? Can't remember on your own?" I couldn't. So I stopped. I stopped going to the gym. First tomorrow, then next week, then next month. A year later, I realized I hadn't set foot in a gym in over a year. My muscles were flabby. I got winded easily. Walking up the stairs to the second floor of my own house, I'd stop at the landing to catch my breath. My skin sagged. My hair thinned. My face turned gray, as if I never got enough sleep, even though I slept 10 hours a night. The doctor looked at my blood work and said, "Mr. Harris, if you don't change your lifestyle, you'll be disabled in 5 years." In 5 years, I would be 65. I should have been entering old age healthy and vigorous. Instead, I was turning into a wreck. And my appearance wasn't the only thing changing. Once Veronica got her hands on money, she stopped taking care of herself. At first, it was subtle. Small things. She stopped dyeing her hair every month, started doing it every 3 months, then every 6. Then she stopped entirely, grown-out roots visible from a mile away. She'd say, "Natural is in now." That was a lie. She just got lazy. She stopped going to the gym. She used to brag about her figure, all natural, not an ounce of silicone. Now she bragged about how she could afford not to torture herself with workouts. She gained weight. Not a lot, but enough that her tight dresses no longer hugged what they were supposed to. She got lazy. Sat at home. Got up at noon, ordered takeout, watched TV series until late at night. Sometimes she'd go shopping, spending my money on bags and shoes she had nowhere to wear. She found friends just like her, wives of rich men who didn't work or keep house. They'd meet at restaurants and gossip about who was cheating on whom. I remembered Maria. Maria was never lazy. Even after the kids grew up, she found things to do. She planted flowers in the garden, baked bread on weekends, went to yoga with friends. Our house was always clean, cozy, smelling of baked goods and flowers. I didn't appreciate it. I thought it was just how things were supposed to be. Not an achievement. The baseline. Now I'd come home to a kitchen piled with dirty dishes, Veronica lying on the couch in sweatpants, poking at her phone. "Could you clean up?" I asked once. "Hire a maid," she answered without looking up. "You have the money." I hired a maid. Then a cook. Then a driver because Veronica didn't feel like driving herself. The house turned into an office where the staff worked, and the lady of the house did nothing. And she didn't look after me the way my ex-wife had. I got the flu, spent 3 days in bed with a fever. Veronica ordered soup from a restaurant and left it outside the bedroom door. She didn't come in, didn't take my temperature, didn't check whether my fever had gotten worse. I lay there sweating, hearing her watch TV in the living room, thinking. Maria would have sat next to me, held my hand, wiped my forehead with a cool cloth. Maria did that for 25 years. And I traded her for a woman who couldn't even bring me a glass of water. And now looking at my ex-wife, I'm forced to admit that without me she has flourished. I saw her as soon as we approached the entrance. Only I didn't recognize her. Seriously. I looked at this woman in a blue suit, with silver hair and a light, calm smile, and I couldn't believe it was the same Maria who had been my wife for 25 years. She had lost weight, at least 18 pounds, maybe 20. Her face was leaner, her cheekbones sharper. Her skin glowed, no bags under her eyes, no grayness. Her hair was silver, well kept, with a fashionable cut, not twisted into a bun at the back of her head. She moved differently, lightly, gracefully, as if she were dancing, not walking through a hall. I stared, unable to look away. Next to her was a man in a black suit. I think his name is Steve. This Steve was holding her hand. This Steve looked at her like she was the most precious thing he had. Steve, who was 8 years younger than her and didn't see it as a problem. And it wasn't a problem. Because Maria looked amazing. I even felt jealous. Though I had no right to be jealous. I left her myself. I said she was too old for me. I chose Veronica, young, flashy, striking. And now, my young wife had turned into a slovenly housewife with no motivation. And my old wife had become a beauty, the kind men dream about. Where was the justice? Veronica noticed me staring at Maria. She pursed her lips. "What are you staring at her for? A sad sight." I didn't answer. "She's old," Veronica continued. "Look at those wrinkles, ridiculous." I looked at Maria's wrinkles. They were there. But they were beautiful, like cracks in an old porcelain vase worth $1 million. Then I looked at Veronica and saw her gray skin, her undyed roots. She was 27, but she looked 45. Maria was 56, but she looked 45. They had evened out. My ex-wife had caught up to my new wife in looks. Soon she would pass her. I was angry at myself for these thoughts. I didn't want to be jealous. I wanted to be indifferent. But I couldn't. When I saw Maria, something inside me turned over. Not love. Not anymore. Nostalgia. Regret. A desire to get back what I had thoughtlessly thrown away. But there was nothing to get back. Even if I wanted to go back to her now, she would never agree. In the end, I got what I deserved. A young wife who didn't care about me. Silence in a house where children once laughed. Loneliness in a crowd. Health destroyed by my own selfishness. Chapter 10, Andrew. Meanwhile, the wedding had started. We were sitting in the second row. I am the father. I should have been in the front. I should have been holding my daughter's arm, feeling her elbow tremble, whispering in her ear, "Don't worry, princess, everything will be fine." I should have been placing her hands into the hands of the man who would take care of her for life. But I was sitting in the second row, like a distant relative, an acquaintance, a stranger, because another man was walking my little girl down the aisle. Steve, my ex-wife's fiancé, the one sleeping in the same bed as the woman I threw away, the one who looked at her like she was the center of the universe. I stared at him, instead of looking at my daughter in her wedding dress, instead of memorizing this moment forever. I sat there studying this guy like my survival depended on it. He was younger than my ex-wife. I knew that from mutual acquaintances. We still had a few mutual acquaintances. Someone had told me about him. This Steve, at least 8 years younger, around 48. I checked him out when I first heard about him. At first, I thought he was some kind of con artist, a gold digger. I investigated. No, he had his own business, his own house, his own reputation. He didn't need Maria's money, and Maria didn't have much anyway. After the divorce, she only took a small apartment and a decent settlement, nothing more. He wasn't a hunter. He was just in love with my ex-wife, a 56-year-old woman. And he wasn't ashamed of it. Steve walked down the aisle slowly, confidently. Jen held his arm, and they looked like father and daughter. He wasn't trying to lead her. He just walked beside her, supported her, smiled. I saw him whisper something in her ear, and she smiled back. It pissed me off. Everything about him pissed me off. His calmness, his gray temples that looked elegant, not aged. His suit perfectly fitted, understated, expensive. His posture, straight, confident, without even a hint of a slouch. He was healthy, well-groomed, happy, and I wasn't. I studied him like an enemy, a rival, though he was never my rival. He appeared when I was already gone. He took the empty space, the space I had cleared out myself. But that didn't make me feel any better. Bile rose in my throat. I looked at Steve and I hated him for holding my daughter's arm, for sleeping with my ex-wife, for being younger, for being healthier, for choosing Maria not because she was convenient but because he genuinely wanted her. I shifted my gaze to Maria. She was sitting in the front row, in a blue suit with silver hair and a stylish cut. She was smiling. Crying too, I saw her wipe tears with a lace handkerchief. She was happy. For her daughter, for herself, for her new life. That pissed me off too. Why did she get to be happy? Why hadn't she fallen apart? Why hadn't she given up? Why wasn't she crying at night like I was? Why wasn't she lying on the couch in front of the TV with a bottle of whiskey? I wanted to destroy her. That night at the Italian restaurant, I wanted to crush her. I wanted her to know she was worthless, to disappear, so I could forget about her and start a new life without guilt. It didn't work. Not only did she not disappear, she got better. Stronger, prettier, and I got worse. Weaker, uglier, and every time I saw her, I saw my own defeat. She was a living reminder of what I did. And that I failed. Rage choked me. I tasted it, bitter, sharp like that uneaten cake. I looked at Steve and imagined them waking up in the morning, her making him breakfast. No, he was probably making breakfast for her. She didn't have to anymore. I imagined them drinking coffee in the kitchen, chatting about nothing. Him hugging her from behind, kissing the top of her head. Them laughing. Maria and I hadn't had that for the last 10 years. We had simply coexisted. She took care of me, I got irritated. She talked, I stayed silent. She tried, I pushed her away. And now someone else got it all. Why him? Why not me? I was first. I built that family with her. I gave her children. I had the right. No, I didn't. I had lost it. Veronica sat beside me pouting. She was bored, twirling her phone, checking messages, sighing. She didn't care about the wedding. She didn't care about Jen. She didn't care about me. How much longer? She whispered. The ceremony just started, I answered through clenched teeth. I'm dying of boredom. Why did we even come here? It's my daughter's wedding, I said. We came because we were invited. Your daughter could have not invited us. She hates us. She was right. Jen did hate us. I looked back at Steve. He had reached the altar. He kissed my daughter, not his, on the cheek and stepped aside, taking his place next to Maria. I shifted my gaze to my daughter. Jen, my little girl who had once been afraid of the dark and would call, "Daddy, come here, I'm scared." The girl I carried on my shoulders at parades. The girl I taught to ride a bike, running behind her, holding the seat, then letting go as she pedaled away on her own. The girl who scraped her knee and cried, while I cleaned the wound with peroxide and kissed her forehead. She was grown up now, standing in her white dress, all lace, holding a bouquet of peonies, looking at her groom like he was her whole world. Smiling, crying, trembling. I looked at her and saw the 3-year-old running toward me, shouting, "Daddy's home." I saw the 7-year-old bringing drawings home from school. "This is our family, Daddy, Mommy, me, and Marcus." I saw the 15-year-old rebel screaming, "You don't understand me," and then crying on my shoulder. I had missed so much. The engagement, the wedding preparations, meeting the groom's parents. I had tried calling her, but she never answered. Not once. But right now, in this second, I was just a father, watching his daughter get married. Without him, Jen took Tom's hands. The priest read the vows. I didn't hear the words, only the ringing in my ears and my own heart pounding in my throat. "I take you as my husband," Jen said. Her voice was clear and bright, like a stream. "I take you as my wife," Tom answered. They exchanged rings. They kissed. Everyone applauded. I applauded too late. My hands were shaking. Jen didn't look at me. She looked at Tom, at her mother, at the guests. At me, no. I lost her. That night at the Italian restaurant. Now she was someone else's wife. And soon she would be a mother. She would have her own life. And I would remain somewhere on the sidelines. Veronica tugged at my sleeve. "It's done," she said. "Come on, I want to eat." I didn't answer. "Andrew," I said, "I'm hungry. Let's go to the reception hall." "You go," I said. "I'll be there." She sniffed and walked off, her heels clicking loudly. I stayed where I was. Watched Jen hugging Maria, my ex-wife, who had gotten prettier without me, who had found someone else, who was happy, who didn't need me. I walked over to them. Maria looked up. Her eyes were wary but not frightened. She wasn't afraid of me anymore. "Jennifer," I said. My voice was hoarse, not mine. "You were beautiful." She looked at me. 3 seconds. 5. 10. "Thank you, Dad," she said. Neither warm nor cold. Just polite. I wanted to hug her. I stepped forward. She didn't pull away, but she didn't step toward me either. I hugged her, gently, afraid I might break her. She smelled of perfume and flowers. So small in my arms. So far away. "I love you," I whispered. "I've always loved you." "I know," she replied. And pulled back. 3 words. "I know." Not "I love you too." Not "I forgive you." Just "I know." A statement of fact. She walked back to Tom. I was left standing in the middle of the hall. Guests passed by, someone touched my shoulder, someone looked at me with pity. I saw no one. I looked at my daughter. The daughter who had just gotten married. The daughter who had been walked down the aisle by another man. Because I wasn't worthy. I got what I deserved. But it still hurt. And when I looked at Veronica's empty chair, she had already rushed off to the reception hall. I wasn't thinking about Maria. Not about Steve. Not about my jealousy. I was thinking about my daughter. The one I held in the delivery room. The one who called for me when she was scared of the dark. The one who didn't need me anymore. And that was the bitterest truth of all. Chapter 11, Andrew. The reception. I ended up at the same table as my ex, the family table. My daughter probably wouldn't have agreed to seat me here, but she must have wanted to save face. I'm her father, after all. We're sitting across from each other. Maria next to Steve. Me next to Veronica, who's silently picking at her salad and clearly bored. She's not interested. She doesn't know these people and doesn't want to know them. She doesn't even understand why we came. Your kids hate you, she said in the car. I didn't answer. Because she's right. Around the table, they're talking about the wedding, the young couple's plans, the weather. I don't participate. I sit and stare at my plate. I can't eat. My throat is tight. My son won't talk to me at all. I look at Marcus. He's sitting 2 chairs away next to Lauren. He doesn't look up. When I arrived for the ceremony, he pretended not to notice me. When we were being seated, he deliberately chose a seat far away. He hasn't said a word to me. Not hello. Not how are you. Not even get lost. Just nothing. Emptiness. My daughter barely. Jen came up to me after the ceremony only because the photographer wanted all family members together. She stood next to me just long enough for the shot, then stepped away without hugging, without smiling. Thanks for coming, she said. Politely. Coldly. Like I was a stranger. They haven't forgiven me for that stunt. It's not anger. Anger fades. This is worse, estrangement. They look at me and don't see a father. They see a stranger who hurt them once, and whom they've decided to forget. I can't even forgive myself. Why did I do it? I could have ended things with my old life normally. Divorced quietly, without scandal, without humiliation. Given her the papers through a lawyer, moved out while Maria wasn't home, not broken her spirit, not broken the children's hearts. Let them keep their family home. I had the money to buy myself a new mansion. But I took our old house out of spite. Because I didn't want normal. I wanted to hurt. To prove I was in charge. That I could do anything. That I had the right. That's why I'm now sitting at the family table like a stranger. Like a punished child seated with the adults so everyone can see how bad he is. I look at Maria. She laughed at something Steve says. Puts her hand on his shoulder. She's fine. She has a new life, a new man, new love. And I have a wife who doesn't remember I exist, a son who won't talk to me, and a daughter who says Dad like it's a stranger's name. I could have changed everything that night. In that moment, I could have not taken out that envelope, could have torn it up, apologized, asked for a second chance. But no. I was angry at my wife because our time had passed. Actually, I thought her time had passed. I convinced myself of it, hammered it in like a nail until it went straight through my skull. Maria is old. Maria doesn't measure up anymore. Maria is dragging you down into old age, sickness, death. And you're still young. You still can. You deserve better. Because Veronica told me so. And I listened. And believed. Because I wanted to. I liked thinking of myself as a young, strong, desirable man. Not a man pushing 60 with grown children, an aging wife, and nothing ahead but silence and retirement. I was a fool. I sit at the table looking at my ex-wife, and she's become a beauty. I don't recognize her. Not even 3 years have passed, and she's changed beyond recognition. The woman I thought was old and fading now looks like time has reversed. She's glowing. No more of that exhaustion that marked her in the last few years. No more, oh, I'm so tired. No bags under her eyes. No gloomy expression. She laughs brightly, openly, youthfully. And her laugh doesn't sound forced. Next to her is Steve. He looks at her with admiration, not familiarity, with admiration, like she's a miracle he still can't quite comprehend. And me. I'm the one who called her old. The one who said she was dragging me down. The one who chose a young secretary, over the woman who stood by me for 25 years. Without me, she blossomed. I was poison to her. I was her exhaustion, her under-eye bags, her eternal "I'm so tired." Because I didn't appreciate her. I left and she blossomed. Like a flower kept in a dark basement, finally brought into the sun, its petals spreading wide. I look at her and think, how could I not see it? How could I choose Veronica, who's sitting here pouting, picking at her salad, looking older than Maria despite being 27? How? I was blinded. By my fear of aging. By my ego. By my desire to prove to myself and the world that I still could. I was a fool. But realization only comes when nothing can be fixed. She glances at me, briefly, without interest. I'm nothing to her. A person who was there, then passed through. She's not angry. She doesn't even notice me. And that's worse than hatred. Indifference kills. Because hatred is passion. Indifference means you're already dead to that person. Dead. That's what I got. Instead of being with the woman who became a beauty, I'm sitting with the one who let herself go. Instead of enjoying life, I'm sitting here envying my own ex-wife. Instead of being the father who walks his daughter down the aisle, I'm sitting in the second row, watching another man do it. I look at Maria. She takes a sip of champagne. Her hands are calm, steady. She's not nervous. She's comfortable in her own skin. She's accepted her age, her wrinkles, her life. And that acceptance has made her even more beautiful. I'm still fighting. Trying to look younger. Ashamed of my gray hair, my belly, my crow's feet. I buy expensive clothes, an expensive watch, an expensive car, to prove to myself that I'm still worth something. But I'm worth nothing. I'm empty. Burned out. Abandoned by everyone I ever loved. I was a fool. I keep repeating it to myself. Then I catch Veronica's eye. She looks at me with confusion. Why so sour, she asks. It's a celebration. A celebration, I repeat. At least smile, you look like you're at a funeral. I try to smile. It's a twisted grimace. Veronica turns away, pulls out her phone and starts scrolling. I look at Maria again. She's laughing. Steve whispers something in her ear. She blushes. I see her cheeks turn pink. At 56, she's blushing at compliments. When was the last time I complimented her? I don't remember. Maybe 10 years ago. Maybe more. I stopped seeing her as a woman. She became a function, cooks, cleans, does laundry, manages my health. I stopped seeing her as a person. But Steve sees her. And she bloomed under his gaze. Because love is when you're truly seen. As you are. Aged. With wrinkles and gray hair. And still considered beautiful. I never saw her. I threw her away. And now I look at her and don't recognize her. A beauty. My ex-wife is a beauty. And I'm the fool who traded her for a cheap knockoff. That's what upgrade means. The car is newer, but the quality is worse. Chapter 12, Andrew. During the reception, I find out my ex and Steve are getting married. Alice, Tom's mother, says it. She's sitting next to Maria, chatting sweetly, then suddenly asks, loud enough for half the table to hear. Maria, have you and Steve set a date yet? We're all so looking forward to your wedding. I freeze. My fork stops halfway to my mouth. The piece of fish I lifted stays suspended in the air. Maria smiles. Calmly, softly, without a trace of embarrassment. Not yet, Alice. After Jen's wedding, we'll sit down and decide, probably in the spring. Oh, that's wonderful. Spring is so romantic. Alice claps her hands. Steve takes Maria's hand under the table. But I see it, the movement of his shoulder, the slight lean. He squeezes her fingers, she squeezes back. I watch them, and something inside me turns over. They're getting married. My ex-wife, she's my ex, though I'm still not used to the word, is marrying another man. Not some young gold digger. Not a gigolo. A normal, successful, loving man who's 8 years younger than her and couldn't care less about her age. 8 years younger. When I was with Maria, I thought she was old, and this guy, He's younger and doesn't see a problem. I clench my teeth to keep from laughing out loud. Honestly, that bitter sour taste fills my mouth, the one I always get before I say something nasty. I feel the bile rising in my throat. I want to stand up and say, "Are you serious? She's 56. What wedding? What spring? Where do you think you're going in a white dress with gray hair getting married?" But I hold back. Because people are watching. Because I already publicly humiliated my wife once, and I still can't forget how that ended. Because if I say one word now, Marcus will get up and leave. Jen will never forgive me. Even Maria, who still looks at me without hatred, would start hating me. I stay quiet. I chew my fish. It's tasteless. Everything is tasteless. But the bile doesn't go away. It builds, grows, pushes from inside. I wait. I wait for a moment when Maria is alone, because I have to tell her. Not to stop her, no, it's too late, just so she knows, so she hears. So that serene smile of hers falters just for a second. Petty, vile, childish, but I can't help myself. The moment comes an hour later. Jen and Tom are cutting the cake, that light yogurt cake with berries, something new, unfamiliar. The guests applaud. Maria steps away to the bar to get some water. Steve is still at the table talking to Marcus. Veronica is in the ladies' room. She's probably been there half an hour, but I don't care. I stand up, walk to the bar. Maria is facing away from me, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. I remember that gesture. She always did it when she was nervous or focused. But right now, she's calm, relaxed. She's fine. "Maria," I say. She turns, surprise in her eyes. Not fear, not pain, just surprise that I approached. "Andrew," she answers. "Waiting." I look at her, her silver hair, her calm face, her hands holding a glass of water, wearing a new ring I've never seen before. Probably from Steve. I open my mouth. The nasty remark slips out on its own. "I hear you and Steve are getting married," I say. My voice is even, but the corners of my lips curl into a crooked smirk. "Don't you think you're a little old for marriage? You're almost 57. Where do you think you're going in a white dress with gray hair getting married?" I wait. I wait for her to cry. Or get angry. Or at least flinch. She looks at me. With surprise. Not hurt. Not anger. Surprise. Like I've done something stupid. Ridiculous. Like a little boy saying something nasty, not realizing how childish it sounds. "Andrew," she says quietly, calmly, "that's not for you to judge." I open my mouth to answer. To say something even sharper. Even more hurtful. But she's already turned away. Taken her water. Walking back to the table. To Steve. To her life. I'm left standing at the bar. Alone. I bite my tongue. My mouth fills with the metallic taste of blood. My tongue hurts, but the physical pain is nothing compared to what's inside. She's right. It's not for me to judge. Me who married Veronica at 57. Me who traded 25 years of marriage for a secretary. Me who's sitting at the family table like a stranger because my own children don't recognize me. Who am I to judge whether she's too old? I'm old, sick, lonely. I have no right to tell others what to do. Not for you to judge. Just 5 words. But they hit hard. I go back to the table. Veronica is already in her seat, back again, made up, bored. She doesn't ask where I went. She doesn't care. "Why are you so red?" she asks. "Hot," I answer. "The AC is on." I don't answer. I stare at my plate. The fish is cold. I won't eat it. I look at Maria. She's sitting next to Steve. He's saying something to her I can't hear, but I see his lips move. She smiles, nods, lays her head on his shoulder. They're not paying attention to me. I'm nothing to them. Good. I bit my tongue. Literally and figuratively. But the pain doesn't go away. I think about what I said. A little old for marriage. Such hypocritical words from a man who left her for a woman 30 years younger. From a man sitting with that woman now, and she hasn't made him any happier. From a man who has aged so badly that his own daughter won't look at him. Too old. She looks younger than my wife. She's healthier than me. She's happier than me. She has a future, with Steve, with their new family, with their spring wedding. And me. What do I have? Nothing. I watch Maria smile. Laugh. Straighten Steve's tie. Watch him kiss her temple. Not for you to judge. She's right. I don't get to decide anything anymore. I've lost the right to judge, to advise, even to simply be near. I sit at the table, biting my tongue, watching someone else's happiness. I destroyed my own. Chapter 13, Andrew. We left the reception early. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't sit at that table, watching Maria, Steve, their happy faces, her resting her head on his shoulder. I couldn't bear the polite glances from David and Alice, who knew who I was and what I'd done and tried to be nice but couldn't quite manage it. I couldn't watch Marcus, who wouldn't look up, or Jen, who thanked me for coming in a tone that made me feel like a casual acquaintance, not her father. I told Veronica, let's go. She didn't argue. She didn't like it there either, too many people looking at her like she was the cause of all this. Which she was. But she didn't care. She was just bored. We walked to the parking lot. I was silent in the car, so was she. At home, Veronica went straight to the bedroom, muttering something under her breath. I caught fragments. Some wedding. Your daughter didn't even smile at me. I don't know why we went. I didn't answer. I took off my jacket, hung it over the back of a chair, and went into the living room. I sat down on the same couch where Maria and I used to watch TV in the evenings. I sat there staring at the wall. On it were the lighter rectangles left by the pictures she'd taken down. Like reminders. Like mockery. I didn't undress. Didn't drink. Just sat. Images played in my head. Maria in her blue suit, her smile, her calm eyes, her "that's not for you to judge." Steve holding her hand. Jen saying, "I know" instead of "I love you." Marcus not looking up. I sat like that until midnight. Then I went to the bedroom. Veronica was already asleep, lights off, clothes on the floor, her phone still glowing on the nightstand. I lay down on my side of the bed and turned toward the wall. I didn't fall asleep quickly. The next day, there was no peace at the office. I arrived at 9. The secretary, the new one, not Veronica, brought coffee the way I liked it. I took a sip. Bitter. Not the way Maria used to make it. But I didn't complain. I felt terrible all day. Not physically, though my head ached and my chest felt tight. Emotionally, I was torn up inside. I couldn't focus on work, even though there was so much piled up from the weekend. I stared at the monitor, the letters swam. I answered emails, then reread them and didn't understand what I'd written. My deputy came in with a report. "Mr. Harris, are you okay?" I said yes. He didn't believe me, but he left. At lunch, I didn't eat. I sat in my office and stared out the window. Down below, people walked the streets, some with coffee, some with papers, some laughing. They had their own lives, their own worries. I had emptiness. I thought about Maria. What was she doing right now? Probably at home with Steve, or choosing a wedding date, or just sitting in the kitchen talking. She was happy. She was at peace. And I wasn't. I thought about Veronica. What was she doing? Still sleeping. Watching TV. Ordering takeout. I didn't call her. She didn't call me. That was how it always was, each of us on our own. I thought about my children. About Jen, happy on her honeymoon with a husband who loved her. About Marcus, building his life without me. I was surplus. Everywhere I was surplus. No one was waiting for me. Because I had cut myself off from everyone who could have loved me. By 3 o'clock, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. I told the secretary, "I'm leaving." She nodded. I grabbed my keys, walked out of the office and got into my car. I drove home. The road was empty. I looked at oncoming cars, trees, traffic lights, but I didn't see any of it. My thoughts were far away. With Maria. With the kids. With the life I had destroyed myself. Why did I do it? Why couldn't I have stayed? Why couldn't I have tried again? Why couldn't I have said, Maria, I'm not okay, help me? Because I'm proud. Because I'm stupid. Because I thought youth could be bought. I pulled up to the house, parked in the driveway, got out. The sun was in my eyes, but it was cold. Autumn, the season when everything dies. I opened the door with my key. Silence in the hallway, but not the silence of an empty house. A different silence. Tense, like someone had frozen at the sound of the key. I took off my shoes. Walked down the hall. Sounds came from the bedroom. I stopped. My heart pounded in my throat. I didn't recognize the sounds at first. Then I did. Veronica's voice. Not the voice she used with me. Not irritated. Not bored. Different. Muffled. Excited. And a man's voice. A stranger's. Low. Raspy. I stood in the hallway, gripping my keys, unable to move. No. Not me. I did everything for her. Money. A house. Cars. Status. She got everything she wanted. Why would she need someone else? I approached the bedroom quietly. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Veronica was in bed. With a man. A stranger. Young 30 at most, maybe younger. Built, tanned, with a tattoo on his shoulder. He lay on his back, breathing heavily. Veronica sat on top, pulling a sheet around her. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smeared. On the nightstand, 2 glasses of unfinished wine. They didn't hear me come in. Or they did, but didn't react in time. I looked at them. At her. At him. At the bed where I slept every night. Veronica, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. She shrieked. The guy sat up sharply, eyes wide. He started fumbling on the floor for his jeans. Andrew, it's not what you think, Veronica said. The standard line. The one everyone says in that situation. I expected something more original. Not what I think, I repeated. What is it then? The guy yanked on his jeans and grabbed his t-shirt. He didn't look at me. He scurried past, almost brushing my shoulder. I didn't stop him. A minute later, the front door slammed. Veronica stayed sitting on the bed, pulling the sheet up to her chin. Andrew, he's just a friend. A friend, I repeated, who was in my bed with my wife. She fell silent, pursed her lips. There was no fear in her eyes. No shame. Just annoyance that I'd come home at the wrong time. You didn't think I'd sit at home watching you get old, did you? She said, quietly but firmly. Andrew, you knew what you were getting into. You bought a young wife. I gave you status. And what did I get? An old husband who works all day and only eats and sleeps at home. I'm bored. I looked at her. The woman I had destroyed my family for. The woman I had chosen over Maria. The woman now sitting in my bed, telling me I was old and boring. Get out, I said. What? Get out of my house today. She smirked. And where will I go exactly? I don't care, to your friend, to your mother, to a hotel, not my problem. She stood up and threw on a robe. She didn't hurry. She walked to the closet and started pulling out clothes, threw them onto the bed indiscriminately, dresses, shoes, bags. You'll regret this, Andrew, she said without looking at me. You'll be lost without me, who wants an old man like you. I didn't answer. I left the bedroom, went downstairs to the kitchen, sat at the table, the same table where we'd once had breakfast as a family. Maria, Jen, Marcus, me, laughing, arguing, making plans. Now I sat there alone, waiting for my young wife to pack her things and leave for her lover. An hour later, she came out with 2 suitcases. She didn't even say goodbye, just threw over her shoulder, my lawyer will be in touch about alimony. The door slammed. Silence. Real silence. Not the kind I thought was suffocating me before. The kind that comes after a disaster. When everyone is gone. When no one is left. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me, unable to move. The same thought circled in my head. What a fool I am. What a fool I am. What a fool I am. I repeated it over and over like a mantra. I left Maria, loving, caring, faithful, for a woman who cheated on me with a stranger within 3 years. I destroyed my family for someone who never cared about me from the start. I lost my children for a woman who didn't even look back when she left. I got what I deserved, but it didn't feel any better. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the unwashed dishes, cups, plates, glasses. On the table was Veronica's phone. She had forgotten it. The screen lit up with a message. I picked it up. Read it. You okay? The old man didn't kill you. From that guy. Her friend. I put the phone back down. Stood up. Walked to the window. Outside, it was getting dark. Autumn twilight. Cold. I thought about Maria. About how she had said, "Andrew, that's not for you to judge." She was right. I had no say in anything anymore. I had lost the right to everything I once had. I thought about my children. About how they had probably already heard this. About how they would never know how much I was hurting. Or maybe they would know, and they wouldn't care. I thought about myself. About where I was going. There was no answer. Curtain. What a fool I am.
Chapter 14. Maria. Jen and I met up after her honeymoon. I chose the same little cafe, cozy, with the best ristretto in town. Jen loved it. I loved it. This was where we had talked about whether to invite her father to the wedding. Now we would talk about what came after. I arrived first. Ordered ginger tea. No coffee, it was evening, and I didn't want to risk insomnia. I sat by the window, watching the street. September, still warm, but the leaves were starting to turn. Autumn, the season for taking stock. Jen was 10 minutes late. She used to never be late, but now she had just returned from her honeymoon, still dizzy with happiness, with love, with being a wife. I smiled, watching her walk in. She had a tan. Her hair was lighter, bleached by the sun. A soft smile lingered on her face, even when she was serious. She sat down across from me, ordered green tea and a mousse she had never tried before but now felt like something new. We chatted about trivial things. How the flight was awful, but the hotel was wonderful. How Tom ate too many clams, and they were up all night. How she ran into a college friend on the beach, and it was awkward because her friend was with a new guy while her husband stayed home. Normal girl talk. I listened and smiled. My daughter was happy. That was what mattered. Then she fell quiet. Ran her finger round the rim of her cup. Looked up. Mom, Dad called me. I didn't flinch. Didn't change expression. Just nodded. When? Last night. I was about to go to bed. He called my cell. I almost didn't answer. I thought he'd say something nasty about Tom or you, but I picked up. And what did he say? Jen looked away. Out the window. I could see her gathering her thoughts. He was crying, Mom. Real tears, not fake. I could hear him sobbing. I stayed quiet. He said he's divorcing Veronica, that she had a lover, that he kicked her out, that he's alone in that big empty house, that he can't do it anymore, that he blames himself for everything, that he's completely destroyed. I listened. Inside, silence. No sympathy. No satisfaction. Just silence. As if she were talking about a stranger. And you? I asked. I said he was right, my daughter said with a shrug. She said it calmly. Without anger. Without gloating. Just a fact. I told him, you're right, Dad, you're destroyed, and it's your own fault. He got quiet. Then he said, you're right, and just cried even harder. Jen sipped her tea. Set the cup down. You know, Moms, when you told me to think about inviting Dad to the wedding, I thought it was the right thing too. He's my father after all. I thought, let him come. Let him see. Maybe we can start over. Maybe time heals everything. She looked at me, quiet sadness in her eyes. But during the ceremony, I realized it didn't. I waited. She continued. I was walking down the aisle. Steve had my arm. I was looking at Tom, at you, at Marcus, at the guests. And then I saw him out of the corner of my eye, sitting in the second row. And suddenly I understood, he's not my father. What do you mean, not your father? Same face, same eyes, same nose, same jawline. But he's not the same. You know, that dad who tied my hair ribbons, took me to the park, taught me to ride a bike, that person is gone. He died. Or he turned into this person. And this person is a stranger. I looked at him and felt nothing. No love, no resentment, no pity, nothing. I nodded. I understood. Because I had looked at Andrew at that wedding and felt nothing too. Only surprise that I could ever have loved him. And that phone call, Jen continued. When he called, crying, he said, "Sweetheart, forgive me, I messed everything up." I listened, waiting for something inside me to turn over, for me to cry, to say, "Dad, it's okay, I forgive you." She fell silent. Her lips trembled, not from pain, from surprise. That she wasn't who she thought she was. I didn't feel a thing, hot or cold, just nothing. I listened to him sob and felt empty, like he was calling someone else, not me. I said, "Dad, I have to go." He said, "Okay," and he hung up. Jen looked at me. In her eyes, a question. Or a plea. Or just exhaustion. "Mom, is it normal to feel nothing?" I thought for a few seconds. Then I took her hand in mine. "Yes," I said. "It's normal. You don't have to feel what you don't feel. Forgiveness can't be forced. Love can't be commanded. You can be polite to him, wish him a happy birthday, invite him to your wedding like you did. But you don't have to love him. You don't have to pity him. You don't have to save him." "And you," she asked, "do you feel sorry for him?" I looked out the window. At the yellowing leaves. The passers-by. A young couple with a stroller. New parents, smiling at each other. "No," I said. "I don't, because pity is for when someone isn't at fault. He is at fault. He chose this. No one forced him to say those words, to leave for Veronica, to humiliate me in front of everyone. He did it himself, and now he's reaping what he sowed." "But it doesn't hurt you." "It hurt 3 years ago. It hurt a lot. I thought I was going to die, but I didn't. I got up, I healed myself. And now I look at him and see a stranger, just like you." Jen nodded. Exhaled. As if shedding a weight. "Thank you, Mom." "For what?" "For not telling me I have to forgive him, for not pushing, for just being here." I smiled. Squeezed her hand. "You're my daughter. I'll always be here, no matter what." We sat in silence. Finished our tea. Outside, autumn was warm and golden. Soft jazz played in the cafe, like at her wedding. Then my daughter looked at me. Curiosity in her eyes. Light, alive, unburdened by the past. "Mom, what did you and Steve decide about your wedding?" I smiled. Warmth spread through me, not from the tea, but from thoughts of the future. "We decided," I said. "Spring, a small ceremony, only the closest people, at the lake by his cabin." "Oh, that's where you went for the weekend." "Yes, it's beautiful there. Steve wants the ceremony on the shore, outdoors, me walking barefoot." Jen smiled. "That's wonderful, Mom. You deserve it." "I know," I said. And it wasn't pride. It was quiet certainty. I deserve happiness. We all do. The question is whether we're ready to accept it. And you're ready. I looked at my reflection in the window. 56 years old. Silver hair. Crow's feet from laughing, not crying. A confident posture. A calm gaze. "I'm ready," I said. "I've never been as ready as I am right now." We ordered a second cup of tea each, talked about the dress. I had chosen a simple cream-colored one, no lace. The music Steve wanted jazz and I didn't mind. The cake not chocolate, of course. A light fruit cake. The guests only family, only those who were truly happy for us. Jen offered to help with the planning. I said, "You just got married, take a break." She said, "Mom, I want to." And I gave in. Because arguing with my daughter is useless. She's stubborn. Like me. That evening, I went home. Steve had already made dinner. Pasta with seafood, my favorite. Candles on the table. Red wine, semi-sweet, which I had recently learned to like. "How's Jen?" he asked, kissing my cheek. "Good, she's happy." "And you?" I hugged him, burying my nose in his sweater. It smelled of pine and lemon. "I'm very happy," I said. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being here, for choosing me, for making me feel at home." He held me tighter. Silent. No unnecessary words. Just held me. And I closed my eyes and thought about how far I had come. 3 years ago, I sat in the kitchen, unable to breathe. I thought my life was over, that no one wanted me, that I was old, worthless, forgotten. Now I have love. A happy daughter. A son who's proud of me. A man who looks at me like I'm a miracle. I haven't forgiven Andrew. I don't need to. Forgiveness doesn't come on command. But I've let him go. Let go of the anger. Let go of the pain. Let go of the past. Now it's where it belongs, in another life. In this life's spring. A wedding. A lake. A new beginning. And I'm ready. The end.